Well, hello there.
Hey,
Friends, lovers.
Hey!
Just trying not to step on you there. I've noticed that I sometimes step on Amy in audio format. And don't want to blow that because this is an important week. This is an important time. We're going to talk about that. Friends, lovers, happy Sunday, and thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. By now, you know who I am. You know who she is. I'm Robert Nasir. This is Amy Nasir. You know who you are, and we are glad you are here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yay.
Today is Sunday, November 14th, 2021, the 318th day of this, your best year yet. I think maybe this has been my best year yet in a few ways that we'll talk about, that we've measured, that we have made happen. There are 47 days left. If it's not already your best year yet, to make it so, 47 days left until 2022. How's that sound? Does that sound great? Does that sound ominous? Either way, we're going to make it excellent. 41 days until Christmas. If you haven't started your shopping yet, maybe back of the mind. You know, it's November. Black Friday sales are coming up. Some of them have started early already.
Yike!
There are 11 days until Thanksgiving, but to me that feels like forever away. If you've got a big Thanksgiving to plan, you're probably already on that. But for us, for Amy and I, it's just 7 days.
Oh, 7 days.
Until we renew our vows.
Yes, our wedding vows, our anniversary.
Our anniversary.
Yay!
It is that time for us, and believe me, you're going to hear about it. We're going to be talking about it on the social networks. We're going to be talking about it on our shows. And then a week from now, when we come back together for 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir, it will be all over. So this is going to be an amazing week. And on this date, November 14th, on this date, this very date right here, the London, England newspaper, the St. James Chronicle. The St. James Chronicle carried an item announcing, "The very identical Mr. Franklin." This is Benjamin Franklin. The very identical Mr. Franklin, whom Lord Chatham, former leading parliamentarian and colonial supporter William Pitt, so much caressed, and used to say he was proud in calling his friend, is now at the head of the rebellion in North America.
Scandalous.
Benjamin Franklin, joint postmaster general of the colonies, and his son William traveled to London together in 1857. There, for the next 5 years, William studied law and Franklin studied social climbing. They had remarkable success for a candlemaker's son and his illegitimate progeny. By the end of their sojourn, William had become an attorney and received an honorary Master of Arts from Oxford University, while his father reveled in honorary doctorates from Oxford and the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. The elder Franklin's plans for his son's advancement succeeded, and his son won the choicest of appointments, a royal governorship. In 1762, Franklin then accompanied his son from London back over the ocean to Pennsylvania, only to return to London as Pennsylvania's agent in 1764, where he lobbied for the placement of the colony under direct royal control. He soon added Georgia, New Jersey, Massachusetts to the list of colonies for which he served as spokesman to Parliament. But in 1775, Franklin returned to America as the American Revolution approached. He served as a delegate to the Continental Congress, and in 1776 signed the Declaration of Independence. Ironically, his son William came out on the side of the British during the War of Independence and was imprisoned while serving as the Loyalist governor of New Jersey. November 14th, that newspaper story was published announcing Benjamin Franklin's one of them. Oh my gosh. Also, similarly, as we celebrate independence on this important day, November 14th, 1960, Ruby Bridges desegregated her school. We've talked about Ruby Bridges before. Famous 6-year-old girl.
Yeah, I almost had a chance to meet her, but it didn't come through. She actually came to the Henry Ford Museum and talked a few years ago. Amazing.
That's right. Where the famous painting of her by Norman Rockwell was part of the Rockwell exhibit there at the Henry Ford Museum. November 14th, 1960, a court order mandating the desegregation of schools came into effect in New Orleans, Louisiana. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges walked into William Franz Elementary School, accompanied by federal marshals and taunted by angry crowds. They're throwing fruit at this 6-year-old little black girl for going to a white school. Amazing. And the picture of her shows her with her head up high.
Wearing a white dress, and I believe that white dress was actually in the exhibit at the Norman Rockwell exhibit that we had.
And every indication is she was as brave a girl and ultimately a woman as the painting suggests. Also on this date, we wish a happy 70s... We're going to tie all this together, don't we always? Also on this date, we wish a happy 72nd birthday to James Young, J.Y., of Styx, who released one of my favorite albums that was released over the COVID pandemic. Their new album, Crash of the Crown. I've recommended that before. Also, happy 60th birthday to D.B. Sweeney, who I know almost nothing about. D.B. Sweeney turned 60 years old today, but he was the co-star of one of my favorite films, The Cutting Edge. If you haven't seen the film The Cutting Edge,
such a good one.
If you like sports films, if you like dramedies, if you like romantic films,
yes,
or if you just trust my judgment, go see the film The Cutting, not the new one. There was a re-release and there was a sequel.
Yeah.
Ignore those. I'm sure they had their own charm, but The Cutting Edge. Oh, what a great film. D.B. Sweeney, happy birthday today with his co-star Moira Kelly in that film. Finally, a happy 59th birthday to Laura San Giacomo. Giacomo. I don't know why my article here has a typo. It's with an O. Laura San Giacomo, who incidentally is not Marisa Tomei. Because I can't be the only person who ever confused the two. Mm-hmm. Happy 59th birthday to Laura San Giacomo, co-star of one of my favorite movies of all time, Pretty Woman. I mention that because, of course, our good friends Mark and Kayla who are in Broadway. Well, they're not literally on Broadway. They're in musicals, though.
Yeah, they love Broadway.
And they're in local theater. And last night they went to see the musical Pretty Woman. Well, apparently the film Pretty Woman has been made into a musical. So I need somebody, I'm sure Mark and Kayla will do this, and anybody else who's up for it, tell me why that's not blasphemous. I love that movie. How can they make it into a musical? We've joked about that before. Amy and I are not musical people. We have a few select musicals. We love The Sound of Music, for example, but the Broadway-style musical just really isn't our thing. So why would they do that? So I'm going to wish a happy 59th birthday to Laura San Giacomo because she was the star of the movie, not the Broadway production, of Pretty Woman. And finally, November 14th, finally, it is World Diabetes Day. We have a couple close friends and some listeners and viewers we know who are diabetic, type 1 diabetic. And that's a tough row to hoe.
It is.
Because type 1 diabetes requires daily injections of insulin. Insulin is not cheap. It's crazy expensive. But on top of that, the process of monitoring your blood sugar levels and doing those I feel so bad for people facing that challenge. All the type 2 diabetics out there, you guys stop eating all that fast food. No, I'm kidding. But the point is type 2 diabetes is more manageable. And all of our diabetic friends, we extend our wishes for good health and hugs to you. And hopefully those insulin prices are going to come down.
Yeah, and hopefully there's going to be even more innovations. I know that there are some things on the horizon.
Now, you've been following that. There are connections between the RNA vaccines and things far beyond COVID, including treatments for diabetes.
Right, and other medical technologies as well. And I didn't make a list of all of them, but look it up. It's really exciting, and hopefully, in the very near future, things will get better.
We talk about diseases that have been cured, and we talk about conditions that have been remediated, and how new and better things are coming. And RNA technologies might not be the answer to all of that, but the point is that things are happening. The fact that Magic Johnson is still alive tells me that a lot of the things we thought were fatal aren't, and things are getting better. So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. What are we listening to this week?
I've been listening to a lot of Barry Weiss. Her podcast,
My
Honest.
darling, I can't get enough of your love, baby.
Well, no, not that Is there another Barry Weiss that
Oh,
sings?
Weiss. I thought you said Barry White. Okay.
No. Yeah, Barry Weiss is a lovely lady, and a very free thinker when it comes to the issues, between liberals and conservatives. And she's very interesting to listen to, and her podcast, Honestly.
I have mentioned before, and I'm sure I'll be mentioning again, a lot of my hope for the future right now comes from people who are not conservatives and are not far left, but people who are leaving the far left for the reasonable positions in the middle and they're not moderate positions. Mm-hmm. They're really radical positions. People who still believe, for example, in free speech mm-hmm. and in individual rights and ideas, which, sad but true, is becoming an unusual position. So there we go. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful that Barry Weiss has now not just got her Substack, which is great and you should be signed up for, but a podcast as well. One of the most recent episodes highly recommended on luxury beliefs. Her guest, I forget the guest's name, who wrote a book on the topic. This idea that there are things that people say they believe and maybe even really believe, but only because they can afford to. For example, the people who crusade for defunding the police are usually people who live in safe neighborhoods and can afford to say those kinds of things. But there are other examples, too, that aren't just left-right examples. There are people crusading out there right now for polyamory and the end of monogamy, the end of marriage, the end of traditional marriage. And yet, some of the loudest voices in that regard are people who grew up in conventional families, safe families, secure families, the kind of families that put them through college and to earn those PhDs from which they can then look down on the rest of us and say, oh, you old-fashioned people, you need to see beyond that. Monogamy is artificial and marriage is a leftover from the past. So yes, the podcast on luxury beliefs, highly recommended. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Oh, one more thing I've been listening to. Well, actually, I have a couple here. Life on Earth, an interview with Luke Travers. Oh, wait, that was us.
Oh, yeah. Actually, not only did we listen to that, we listened to it as it was going on because we were saying it.
So if you haven't seen our Thursday show, Life on Earth, and this last week's episode, an interview with Luke Travers, highly recommended. There's a connection there as well because the day after we celebrate our anniversary, renew our wedding vows, and have a hall party reception, that Sunday, the 21st of November, Luke Travers, who will be in town for the party, will join us on 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. I know you've been thinking, why aren't there more interviews? Hearing you guys talk is great, but you used to do more interviews. You interviewed Linda Cordair and Quent Cordair. You interviewed Sean Albert, that amazing teacher from the Henry Ford Academy.
Yep.
More interviews. Well, next Sunday, you will get an interview with Luke Travers.
Ooh, yay.
Well, didn't we just talk to him on Thursday? Didn't I just say you should go listen to that interview? Yes. So the difference will be, the difference between our Thursday show and our Sunday show, this will be more personal. This will be more passionate, more emotion, we're gonna dig into the nitty-gritty. Like we do.
I think I almost made Luke cry on Thursday, but I will certainly try to.
You'll have your chance. You will have your chance to do that. Speaking of the reception and the vow renewal, for the vow renewal ceremony, Amy will be dressed in mint green.
Yes.
I have to see if my tux still fits and my tailcoat, but either way, apparently, Amy's decided that I will be wearing mint green as well, at least to the extent of the bow tie. So if anybody's wondering, why is Robert wearing a mint green bow tie with his usual red or orange shirt? And there's your answer right there. In fact, even my show notes, you can see, are written on green legal pad this week. It doesn't look very green. It looks kind of bluish, but I have a blue one that looks much more blue than this.
Yeah.
So yes.
What we're talking about is sort of like a mint green, sea foam, light teal, maybe turquoise, depending on what it is, but it's that whole light blue-green color.
Ice green, because Amy's such an ice queen. Ooh, so cool and emotionless. Just the opposite, obviously. Oh, the other thing that I was listening to this week, and I've recommended it once before, but links are in the show notes, because if you haven't heard them, you need to. The Fountainhead on What is Important and What is Not by Greg Salmieri. That was given at OCON 2018, the one year recently that we didn't go to OCON and missed it, so I'm glad that these ones were put up on YouTube. The Fountainhead on What is Important and What is Not by Greg Salmieri, and a related talk, or slightly related talk, the theme was the Fountainhead that year. Kill by Laughter, Humor in the Fountainhead by Robert Mayhew. See, to me, the Fountainhead has got some of the best humor in fiction. And it's written by Ayn Rand, who some people who don't know anything about Ayn Rand regard as a humorless person. The Fountainhead is hilarious. And that lecture, Kill by Humor, Humor in the Fountainhead, a lot of the humor in the Fountainhead is simply lighthearted, but some of it is cutting. And ironically, the Kill by Humor line belongs to the villain Ellsworth Toohey. But Ayn Rand actually does use humor in the way it should be used against her villains. So, worth listening to. Links in the show notes. Again, What is Important and What is Not in the Fountainhead by Greg Salmieri. Kill by Laughter, Humor in the Fountainhead by Robert Mayhew. And that and a few other things have got me thinking about wisdom this week. And the topic of wisdom. And I mentioned that on the social networks, on Twitter and on Facebook. And a few folks chimed in when I said, well, what's your favorite bit of wisdom? For example, Carrie Ann Biondi said, wherever you go, there you are. Now, who knows where that line comes from? If you haven't already seen the thread on Facebook, wherever you go, there you are. What's fun about that one is some of you will know that from the kind of bizarre science fiction film, if you can call it that, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, kind of a cult film starring Peter Weller, and who else is in that film? I'm forgetting the names.
Do not know.
A very, very strange film. You know, Jeff Goldblum is in the film, and Third Rock from the Sun guy. What's his name? I don't know. I'm getting to be like Yarn. I'm like forgetting names of people. I should be writing things down. Anyway, the point is, famously quoted by Buckaroo Banzai, even though the quote was around long before that. And what's funny about a quote like, wherever you go, there you are, is that it's vacuous. It doesn't say anything. And yet at the same time, we can mine wisdom from it. Similarly, Terry Ogden says, it is what it is. Empty, vacuous. And yet it's kind of saying A is A. Law of identity. Things are what they are, and so you've got to accept the facts. Somebody out there is famous for saying facts don't care about your feelings, and it is what it is essentially saying the same thing. Kurt Kiefner chimes in and says, from David Seabury, 1, never compromise yourself, and 2, no ego satisfactions. Well, that's interesting for a couple of reasons that I'll mention. Incidentally, he's quoting David Seabury. David Seabury in his book, The Art of Selfishness, which you can see on the video camera. I have a copy of right here in my hot little hands, The Art of Selfishness, which can make you a happier person. It's kind of interesting because I also have here in my other hot little hand a copy of The Virtue of Selfishness by Ayn Rand.
I've never seen this before.
Oh, yes. It's a book on the art of selfishness and how to
Who is David
how to be
Seabury?
selfish.
I've never heard of him
psychologist.
Before. Huh.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. And I think this was published before The Virtue of Selfishness. If memory serves, quite a bit before. Where are we at here? Copyright 1937. So there you go.
Wow.
The Art of Selfishness and The Virtue of Selfishness. So Kurt mentions these two rules from The Art of Selfishness: never compromise yourself, and number 2, no ego satisfactions. Well, obviously, if by ego we mean your consciousness, your spirit, your sense of self-esteem, that's not good. But if ego means that false sense of self-esteem, the posturing, the preening, then yes, no ego satisfactions. In other words, no fake self-esteem. And that's good because that's similar to something that I get from Les Brown. And if you know who Les Brown is, not short for Lester, but short for Leslie Brown, although it is a gentleman, African-American gentleman, famous American motivational speaker, author, radio DJ, former television host, and a former politician. He has 7 top rules for success, and these are worth knowing. I'll go through them real quick, just to keep the conversation going. Number 1, believe in yourself. The first thing you need to do is believe in yourself. The first step is you have to say, you can. And number 2, take 100% responsibility for your life. What did we say about ownership? When we did our episode Extreme Ashtray, we talked about extreme ownership. Jocko Willink is famous for that. We've mentioned him before too. When you take responsibility for anything that happens in your life, you can say, oh, well, that means I take blame for a bunch of stuff and that wasn't my fault, or oh, that means I feel a lot of pressure, or oh, that means I feel a lot of guilt, or oh, that means I'm a victim of the things that happened to me. And the exact opposite is true in all 4 of those categories. When you take responsibility for what happens in your life, what it means is you're the one in power. Taking responsibility means, oh, that means I can still do something about it. If you are at the effect of all the causes out there, if you are a bit of foam or detritus in the waves of the ocean being tossed around by everything happening, no, that's not where you want to be. So when Les Brown says, take 100% responsibility for your life, I agree with that 100%. Jack Canfield, let's see, I have it in my notes here, but I didn't put them in order, makes the point that where you are in life is your not your fault. It's to your credit. There's none of us who can't look at things that happened to us and say, you know, it's not my fault that things haven't gone as well as they have. It's not my fault that I'm not as wealthy as I am. It's not my fault even that I'm not as healthy as I am. So, for example, in regard to your wealth, you've been taxed all your life. Not just taxes that went to pay for legitimate things like the police and the military, but Social Security, money you could have and should have invested yourself. You could be a wealthy person right now. Or your health. For how many years were you advised, eat more grains? Stay away from fats. The food pyramid is just one example of, well, you're not as healthy as you should have been because of other people. And, you know, almost anything in politics you can point to and say, that made my life worse. I am not where I should be because of all that. And I'm going to tell you 2 things about that. 1, you're right. It's all true. All of the money that's ever been taxed or taken away from you, all of the regulations that ever stopped you from doing what you might have done with your life, all of the rules that you had to follow that were not of your own making, all of that money sitting in your Social Security trust fund that should have been 5 times larger than whatever pittance you're going to get back if you live long enough. It's all true. And number 2, all of those things and 100 others like them have not stopped you from getting as far as you have gotten. You still made it. If you're still alive and you're listening to this podcast, which means you know how to work technology, and presumably you own some of it, you've gotten as far as you have. And that is no mean feat. Staying alive isn't automatic. It's not the default. You have achieved something. You probably achieved a lot more than you give yourself credit for. And at the same time, there's no guilt or shame in saying, if I look at it that way, I could have gotten even further. And that's what I intend to do. That's what you should do. And it's what you can do if you take 100% responsibility for your life. No matter what life throws at you, you have gotten and you will get to decide what to do with that. So I love that. Radical responsibility. Take 100% responsibility for your life. A couple of the others on here I'm just going to skim through. Deliver more than expected. I love the expression under promise and over deliver.
Right.
Because as a field technician, an IT technician, I have fallen into the trap of doing the opposite. It's very easy to overpromise and underdeliver. It's very easy to say, yeah, I'll be there first thing in the morning, no matter what. And, of course, then what happens? Some other bigger emergency comes up, some higher priority, and you end up getting there later. Underpromise, overdeliver. So, or as Les Brown says, deliver more than expected. Number 4, give your all. And as I've said before, no matter how hard you stretch, you've always got another half inch in you. That sounds vulgar. No matter how hard you stretch, you can always do a little bit more than you are doing. Why not do that? Number 5, ignore the naysayers. That one's hard.
Go ahead. We do have a question from Mary Leen.
Number 6, empower yourself. That could be a whole episode. And number 7, keep moving forward. So.
All right. When did Les Brown live again?
Les Brown, I believe, is still alive.
Okay.
Yeah. I have to look it up. I've looked at his stuff, but I've never actually looked up his biography.
So Marilyn asks,
yes.
Hey Marilyn, thank you. She's over in YouTube in the chat there. And she says, do we have to earn belief in ourselves?
Do we have to earn belief in ourselves? The short answer is clearly yes. Everything has to be earned. And if belief in yourself is both a positive evaluation and a value in and of itself, obviously it has to be earned. But, I'm going to give you a big but. The scale on which you evaluate yourself is complex, it is rich, and most of us all too often over-evaluate ourselves and under-evaluate ourselves. Now, how can you do both? I remember when I was younger, friends of mine would talk about the superiority, inferiority complex. It was a strange thing that people who had a superiority complex tended also to swing to an inferiority complex. And it wasn't just because their self-esteem was a false self-esteem, it was because they were over-abstract in evaluating themselves. And I've seen this in philosophy, seen it in objectivism. The scale on which you evaluate yourself, how good am I? How proficient am I? How efficacious am I? How able am I to deal with the challenges of life? That ain't a simple scale. You can look at yourself, you can look at that guy in the mirror, that gal in the mirror, and say, I have bested some of the hardest challenges of life. I've dealt with medical emergencies. I've taken care of my friends and family through their difficulties. I've achieved a certain amount of wealth. I have worked hard. I have gotten to the end of a pay week and collected my paycheck, and I deserved it. Mm-hmm. Just about everybody can say that. So the question is, well, but is that just the bare minimum, and there's nothing really to hang your hat on there, and you really should have done great things, and unless you can point to something that nobody else has done, why do you think you're a good person? Or are you able to look at every morning that you have gotten up out of bed and gotten yourself washed up and gotten yourself dressed and gone off to work and made the things happen that keep the wheels of the world turning, and look at those things and say, oh, well, damn, I am pretty good. I am able. I am moral. When I say that we can always get a little more out of ourselves, I don't ever want people to think, oh, well, that must mean I'm not good enough, or not as good as I could be, or not as good as I should be. It's why I always say that good is good. And often, almost all the time, good is good enough. So I don't have a short answer to the question other than yes, but.
So Jim, over on Facebook here, he says, the day you decide to look at reality and not evade it is the day you begin to earn the belief in yourself. And yeah, that is actually definitely a theme in my understanding of life, in my own life. If I'm active and I'm creative and I'm producing, I'm in touch with reality, I'm engaging with reality. And I think that's essential for believing in yourself. And that is, as we are conceptual, consciousness, beings of conceptual consciousness, and we're able to introspect inward and extrospect outward. And sometimes we get lost in ourselves, and sometimes we get lost and kind of confused by our own thoughts, and sometimes it's hard to organize them. Sometimes it's really difficult to figure out what your view of yourself really is, and it's hard to figure out what standards to judge that by and how to be objective. But yeah, the one thing I do know is if you're not doing anything in life, if you're not active, if you're not producing, if you're not engaged with the world, it's not a good situation for you. It's not going to end up in you're not going to be in a happy place.
Agreed. And Jim may intentionally be paraphrasing John Galt from Atlas Shrugged, but I can't resist reading this. At this point he's talking about people who deny the law of identity, the fact that things are what they are. We talked about that earlier. The common phrase these days, it is what it is. Some people take that as a way of just accepting reality, and other people take it as a way of saying, you've got to not only accept the facts, you've got to act accordingly. So a quick quote from Atlas Shrugged, just because it's so good. A savage is a being who has not grasped that A is A and that reality is real. He has arrested his mind. At the level of a baby's, at the state when a consciousness acquires its initial sensory perception and has not learned to distinguish solid objects. It is to a baby that the world appears as a blur of motion, without things that move, and the birth of his mind is the day when he grasps that the streak that keeps flickering past him is his mother, and the world beyond her is a curtain, that the two are solid entities and neither can turn into the other, that they are what they are, that they exist. The day when he grasps that matter has no volition is the day when he grasps that he has. And this is his birth as a human being. The day when he grasps that the reflection he sees in a mirror is not a delusion, that it is real, but it is not himself. That the mirage he sees in a desert is not a delusion, that the air and the light rays that cause it are real, but it is not a city, it is a city's reflection. The day when he grasps that he is not a passive recipient of the sensations of any given moment, that his senses do not provide him with automatic knowledge in separate snatches independent of context, but only with the material knowledge, which his mind must learn to integrate. The day when he grasps that his senses cannot deceive him, that physical objects cannot act without causes, that his organs of perception are physical and have no volition, no power to invent or to distort, that the evidence they give him is an absolute, but his mind must learn to understand it. His mind must discover the nature, the causes, the full context of his sensory material. His mind must identify the things he perceives. That is the day of his birth as a thinker and scientist. Mm-hmm. And whether Jim was intentionally paraphrasing that or not, that is absolutely what it makes me think of. Let me go back to the chat to make sure that... Jim does point out, yes, that was The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. I didn't give the full title there, forgive me. And Mary Lee looked it up. Les Brown was born in 1945. If he's the Les Brown who was married to Gladys Knight for a few years. Now I really do have to look up that biography. I apologize for not doing that ahead of time, because I think this is probably a lot more interesting than I'm giving it credit for.
Oh, I'm just... Robert's looking at my screen. He's like, what are you doing with the map there?
Oh, I'm just looking at the comments that were coming in here.
Oh, yeah. And so not only did Jim and Facebook say, yeah, nice bow tie, Robert. Are you preparing for an interview for a job at Chippendales? Forget it. That so-called strip act you did a few months ago was lousy. And then I said, he'll be wearing that and nothing else at our anniversary party.
Well, the after party, yes.
And then Scott over on YouTube, He says, Robert almost has a Chippendales look with the flesh-colored t-shirt and bow tie.
Oh, well.
Anyway, those are the things that just, put a pep in my step.
Yes.
But I love it.
Yes.
So I had some quotes.
Yes. Yes, share with us the wisdom that resonates with you.
Yes. Okay. So, well, actually, before I do, if I'm going to go ahead and post the robertnasir.com webpage into the chats of both sites.
And what will folks find at robertnasir.com?
They will find an opportunity to send us a one-time donation or become a monthly Patreon and help us out with all of this. Christmas is coming. If you want to send us a little bit of holiday love, please do so. And we'd really appreciate it.
We did get a surprise PayPal contribution. Very much appreciated.
Oh, that's great.
From, of all people, I mean, given that his role is the corrector on the show.
Oh, yes.
We received a contribution from the corrector, which is heartening because, everybody who contributes to the show, of course, fills my heart with the warm stuff.
And he's a really great guy. And, since we've named him the corrector, I always imagine him in my mind wearing a cape, blowing in the wind.
and doing kind of a conversational show like this, I'm always aware that there are some people out there who watch this who are smarter than I am. And John always strikes me as one of those people. I'm talking to somebody, or when he's around and when he's listening, I'm talking to somebody who's smarter than I am. I guess I should watch my step and not screw up.
He's a sharp cookie.
Yes.
Sharp
so
cookie.
Anyway,
okay.
Thank you to our patrons. Thank you to our PayPal contributors.
So I'll tell you a quick little story.
Yes.
So when I was in high school, I decided to learn French to the best I possibly could. Unfortunately, the method was by reading and writing and not by speaking it, which was not great. But I did enjoy it, very much so. And I went ahead and I found one of the more popular books that was, a very small book called The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And I went ahead and I got that book in English, and then I found the book in French.
Wonderful.
And so I would kind of compare back and forth what it was saying and try to learn it that way. And I did a little bit. It's better for me to actually talk it, to actually speak it, instead of just writing it or reading it. But I have some really nice quotes by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, because not only did I read Le Petit Prince, but I also read some other books by him, like Wind, Sand, and Stars, and some others. He was a pilot. As a matter of fact, he was lost at sea during World War II on a reconnaissance mission, I believe over the Mediterranean Sea, or somewhere around there. And I've always really admired the guy. And so I decided to look up some quotes. There's one here. It says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and the endless sea. Which is so great. It's about bringing out the best in other people and inspiring people to have a value, to have passion in their lives, to have a passionate value, to yearn for the vast and endless sea, instead of just going through step by step what we're going to do to build a ship. I love that. There's a really short one that I need to remind myself of all the time. Hasn't stuck yet for some things, but a goal without a plan is just a wish. So, yeah, I have many wishes right now. I'll just say that.
A goal without a plan is just a wish.
Yes, yes. And here's another one. Make your dream devour your life, so that life does not devour your dream. Isn't that great?
I like that.
Oh, I love it. Yes. And then there were a couple others here, but yeah, there's a couple of them are a little bit more personal for me that don't know if I can really explain or ascribe meaning to without getting into a long story.
Would you like to read one anyway?
Yeah, I guess I will. This one, it reminds me of something you would say at a eulogy.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually from Le Petit Prince, The Little Prince. You alone will have the stars as no one else has them. In one of the stars I shall be living. In one of them I shall be laughing. And so it will be as if all the stars were laughing when you look at the night sky. You, only you will have the stars that can laugh. And it kind of gets me choked up. So there's that.
It really brings to mind both context and sense of life.
Uh-huh.
I'm always startled when people describe to me the world, especially in the context of culture or politics. Here's the world as it is. And they have a very, very different idea of what's going on out there, of what the world is, of what it looks like, of what the future looks like, of what especially people are. Oh, well, people are mostly good and mostly working and mostly trying to get through their life. And then I get other people who say, no, people suck. People are sheep. People are idiots. People are evil. People are vicious. People can't be trusted. And you're right. It's exactly right that what you think the world is all about depends so much on choice, on what you focus on what you regard as metaphysically significant, what actually matters, what actually makes the wheels of the world turn around, or, in a sense, what you see in the stars. Well, if you think that taking philosophy from Le Petit Prince, the Little Prince, is fanciful, I can go one better than that.
All right.
Because
what is this?
Looking on my bookshelf for The Art of Selfishness, I came across this book, Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah.
I guess I'll be a messiah.
By
Maybe.
Richard Bach,
No.
the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Sorry if I was being irreverent. I haven't actually read this yet.
And there is, in the book, Illusions, there is a sub-book. There's a book that one of the characters in the book is reading called The Messiah's Handbook. And The Messiah's Handbook has ideas in it like this. Learning to find out what you already know. Learning is finding out what you already know. Doing is demonstrating that you know it. Teaching is reminding others that they know just as well as you. And we are all learners, doers, and teachers. This idea that you already know everything you need to know sounds absurd. What do you mean learning is finding out what you already know? And yet, if you were to shoehorn some sense into that, what you'd realize is that there is no problem you face right now that you do not already have everything you need to solve, that you do not know how to figure out, how to address, how to make it happen. Now, it might involve learning. It might involve studying. It might involve, then I've got to get a book or watch a YouTube video or do whatever the thing is. Hire a contractor, whatever the thing is. But there is not a problem in your life right now that you do not already know how to solve. That's my version of this from Illusions. So when I reread it that way, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm kind of good with that. Here, I'll do one more, a bit of wisdom from this crazy book by Richard Bach. The simplest questions are the most profound. Where were you born? Where is your home? Where are you going? What are you doing? Think about these once in a while and watch your answers change. I'm going to post these on the social networks because they might sound a little silly. Where were you born? How is where were you born going to change over time? How will your answers be different in a year? Where is your home? Well, maybe you'll have a different house, but will your answer to that change in a year or 5 years or 10 years? Where are you going? Well, I guess that can mean a lot of different things. I will post these online. Incidentally, one came up. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh, yeah. This came up in conversation earlier this week. So when I saw it in the book, one of the premises of this handbook is supposedly when you open the book, it doesn't have any page numbers, but it will essentially open to the page that you need. Of course, the character in the book says, well, that's nothing special about this book. It works for a newspaper, too. Which comes back to that question, how much insight can you find in something at random? But try this out for size. The bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other's life. Rarely do members of one's family grow up under the same roof.
Mm-hmm.
The bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other's life. Rarely do members of one family grow up under the same roof.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of family in that way.
Yes. And family should be chosen. And yet, when I read that, I realize blood does matter. Not because it's blood, but just because of shared experiences and shared values.
Yes.
If I had never, for example, if I had never met my father, then maybe I would have that's a total stranger to me, means nothing to me, even though the blood is there. But the people I grew up with, my blood relatives, the shared experiences make that mean something. I choose that as an example because I'm one of those people who didn't grow up with his father, and I didn't love or hate my father. He was just a total stranger to me. So I think that it holds true. The bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other's life. Some people take that the wrong way and say, well, you need to, defoo if your family doesn't foster your values. And sometimes that's what you need to do.
Wait, what's defoo?
I know everybody out there is wondering. Unless you've heard of some of these crazy fringe types like Stefan Molyneux, you don't know what defooing is. To defoo is to remove from your life your foo, your family of origin. So this guy, Stefan Molyneux, and again, a lot of related people in the manosphere, for example, have this idea that, if your family doesn't foster your values, you need to cut them off with extreme prejudice. Now, they don't just distance themselves from their family because their family doesn't share their values. They do it with anger and bitterness and in ways that cut off all communication, even when those doors should be left open. And I think we can do better than that. Even some of us who've had to distance ourselves from some of our family members. And Amy and I are both very familiar with this personally.
Yep.
So I don't mean to say that you should tolerate everything and anything from your family. What I mean to say is that you don't want to get caught up in a false alternative. Because I do think it's true that the bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other's life. But I don't think that always means to be suspicious of your blood relatives or to cut them off too easily.
That could be a topic for another day. Actually, why, and when Robert says we have had unusual experiences with family and dealing with them, that's an understatement. And we've had to learn, what kind of value are we getting out of our family? And sometimes it's surprising what kind of value you can get out of your blood relatives. And we can talk about that at another time. But there's a lot to say about that.
There is a lot to say about family. You, my family, our family. Mary Eileen says in the chat, I've heard he's a nutcase. If you're talking about Richard Bach, he is a nutcase.
Yes.
I've told you before, one of my projects is to extract out the wisdom from well-loved Huey, from Wu. And if anybody is Wu, it's Richard Bach, the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull. On the other hand, if you've read Jonathan Livingston Seagull, you know that it's a delightful book that praises independence. You would not want to read Richard Bach as philosophy.
Yeah.
You really need to be selective in your reading of it.
Yeah, I would say you also don't want to necessarily read Antoine de Saint-Exupéry as philosophy.
Right.
I'll just say that. Yeah.
On the other hand, if we only limit ourselves to authors whose philosophy we agree with completely, then we're limited to about 4 novels and a bunch of short stories. At least Amy and I are.
And a lot of nonfiction.
And a lot of nonfiction.
A lot of nonfiction.
Well, even that's not really a lot, if that's all we ever read in our lifetimes.
It's not. But yeah, no, there's such, I mean,
Mary Aline says, no, Molyneux is who she was calling a nutcase.
Oh, okay.
I could not agree with you more wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Robert even said the name.
I held off saying it.
Named.
Yeah, well, you noticed I didn't say it right away. And then I realized, well, people who do know him, that would clarify what I'm talking about. But you're right, I should have left him as he who must not be named.
Yeah, if you say his name,
it gives him...
a bunch of alt-right people will all of a sudden pop up into your living room out of thin air.
That's true. That's true.
And they'll come after you
and... So I actually have a bunch more notes that I'm not going to read because time is flying.
Yes.
This has been fun. It's been good to spend time with you as always, but I'm going to jump right to our homework for the week.
Ooh, homework. We get homework this time.
Yeah, I haven't done homework in a couple of weeks. I've been neglecting that. And it's a feature of the show. We've got to have homework. So I've got a couple of things. First of all, my big homework for the week is preparing for my vow renewal and anniversary and hall party.
Who are you going to renew your vows with?
That's a good question. I guess if it's a renewal, it kind of has to be the same person that I married 21 years minus 7 days ago. And here's the thing. I hate that expression, here's the thing. I need to come up with a better expression. Give me in the chat your alternative for here's the thing. It doesn't help that...
and look? Or...
And look. Oh, no, because I want to say something more like, here's... Well, it's not here's the point.
And the bottom line is...
No, it's more like something extra. Or it adds up to something more.
And the piece de resistance.
And for the piece de resistance. He loses his voice trying to put on a French accent. So for the pièce de résistance. Now I can't even think of where I was. Here's the thing. Oh, right. Anniversary preparations.
Yeah.
Next Saturday, November 20th.
Yes.
When we celebrate the 21st anniversary, it's actually 5 days before that, 21st anniversary, and renew our vows.
Yeah.
We are going to go before an officiant at the Martha Mary Chapel, a real chapel, but located in Greenfield Village. This beautiful little chapel, built by Henry Ford in honor of his mother and mother-in-law. It's going to be live streamed.
Well, we're going to try because...
Now, Amy is thinking her phone might not be up to the task.
They don't have Wi-Fi.
We don't need Wi-Fi.
Well, I know.
All we need is a decent 5G signal.
But we're just going to try.
And Amy and I are both double vaccinated with Moderna, so we've got the 5G nanoparticles in our bloodstream. Yeah. I don't think we're going to have any problem with this.
Right, I can just switch the trigger in my brain.
That's right. So next Saturday, November 20th, we're going to share that.
Yeah.
It's an exclusive hall party. You can only come if you're invited and pass all of Amy's stringent health requirements.
And go through Ninja Warrior training.
That's right. So, homework for the week. Our anniversary, vow renewal preparations, all of that, again, live stream next Saturday. Also, we do have another episode of Life on Earth on November 18th that I will need to prepare and present with Amy. And we will be preparing and presenting 5 Minutes with Luke Travers on November 21st.
Woohoo!
But finally, because all that's kind of personal, and what good does that do you? And how can you join me in that on this homework, right? So, I'm going to do one more thing. I had as one of our homework assignments to post singing or performance music. Do some kind of music, post it on the social networks. And I did a couple things. I did a piano rendition of Strawberry Fields Forever. Before that, I had done Elton John's Mona Lisas and Mad Hatters. But what I haven't done yet is a rendition of my parody of Let It Be, which, of course, relates to this week's show title, Speaking Words of Wisdom. My parody of Let It Be, if you've seen the Facebook announcement of the group, you've already seen the parody lyrics for this. And my version of it isn't Let It Be, but Laissez-faire. So my homework assignment for the week is going to be record a rendition of my Let It Be parody, Laissez-faire, whisper words of freedom, Laissez-faire. So I will make that happen this week. You will have the opportunity to hear that. Don't know why you'd want to, but you will. It might just be me at the piano, or maybe we'll get the whole rock and roll band involved. Drums and bass, and I should have Amy play the drums because she's a better drummer than I am.
I can't wait.
Or it may just be me at the piano. We'll see what I can pull off, but that is my homework for the week. Since you're not going to do a parody of Let It Be, I would encourage you, as a couple people already did with that previous assignment, post you singing, post some music. We had Brian Faulkner posted. He writes songs and delivers them as sung prose and poetry. Narendra posted a couple of items, both from himself and a friend of his. We had a couple of responses to that. I want to see more. Sing! And I know there's going to be people in the chat saying, I don't sing, you don't want to hear me sing. I will never credit that, even though occasionally it's true, but almost always when people say that, it's not really true. If you can sing in the shower, if you can sing in the car when your radio's turned up, you can sing, record it, post it online. You don't have to, but anybody who wants to join me on the homework for the week, that's what it is. My Post-it note for the week. I'll hold that up for the camera there. My Post-it note for the week says, November 22 is coming, exclamation point. Now, I always recommend that you keep Post-it notes around, and if there's something you need to remind yourself of, usually for me it's an aphorism or an affirmation or some gem of wisdom like we've been talking about this week, put it on a Post-it note. And then put that Post-it note on your bathroom mirror or some other place where you will see it every day, and it will reinforce that idea for you. Well, my Post-it note for the week says, November 22 is coming. And that's just a reminder, since I'm a little bit stressed this week, a little bit challenged at having to put together an episode of Life on Earth to present on Thursday, and then having a vow renewal ceremony rehearsal on Friday, and then on Saturday to do a vow renewal and get all dressed up.
And a reception.
And then to attend a reception, which we're not having a wedding planner or a caterer take care of. We're, just like we did with our wedding, we're doing this, but the good thing is this time we have a team.
Yes, we have an anniversary team.
So
Shout out to my anniversary gang, posse.
Well, we could not pull this off if it wasn't for Mark and Kayla and Carrie and Mark and Echo. We have more than
Paul
one Mark.
And Kathleen.
And Paul
Hardy.
and Kathleen. And I shouldn't be saying names because I will Jennifer and Sean. I shouldn't say names because I'll leave somebody out.
I think we got
everybody who is involved in this inner circle of setting this up is important.
Oh, and Carrie.
And I did say Carrie. But Carrie's worth saying twice. And the point is, Thursday show, Friday rehearsal, Saturday everything, Blitzkrieg, and you'll get to see that live part of it on our stream. Sunday, of course, another episode of this fine show, which you'll get to attend. Luke Travers will be interviewed live here in Metro Detroit. And that is why my Post-it note for the week, and I recommend that you do this anytime you find yourself in a similar circumstance. My Post-it note for the week says November 22. November 22nd is coming. And that's just a reminder to myself that que sera, sera. Yeah. We will do the best we can, but whatever will be, will be. It's going to be good, but even if it's not, next Monday, Monday after tomorrow,
yes,
all of that will be in the past. And I will be able to say,
it'll be great. I say, what we should do on Monday?
What should we do on Monday the 22nd?
We should go on to Kayak, one of these places that, have like last minute deals for the Caribbean. And then we can go on there and we can find a really, really, really cheap deal that leaves that day. And we can pack in a furious hurry and go down to someplace like the Dominican Republic. Actually, that's pretty cheap right now. Take 4 days and have fun time.
Now that to me sounds like taking what is a stressful week
making it stressful
and adding a massive bucket full of stress and pouring it over the top, and then taking cement with one of those tools that you use to smooth cement and spatula or whatever it is.
What about things like the little pick under your nail?
Yeah, exactly. But you let us know in the chat if you agree with my analysis. Maybe that is a less stressful. Yeah. So Chandler says, remember the 22nd of November. Yeah. Which, sounds much better to me than kind of V for Vendetta kind of idea. So,
well,
yes.
maybe the first week of December we can do that.
Now, what did I say? Every time I tell people, sing and post it online, somebody's going to say, you don't want to hear me sing. Jim says, Me sing? My singing was used by the Marine Corps superiors for the Korea detachment in '85 for the interrogation of a few North Koreans who infiltrated our camp to get them to talk. And then he ends that with, they did. See, every time I say, you should sing. Get out there and sing.
Oh,
My God.
you don't. The context here, folks, is that when we do karaoke, we do group karaoke. So
That's
if
true.
you don't have a very strong voice or a good voice, it'll be a group effort.
It doesn't matter because you might not be the only one up there singing.
You might not be
In
the only
fact,
one singing badly.
The only people who don't work out as well at our karaoke parties are the real prima donnas who say, oh yeah, I want to do this one alone. I don't want anybody else to sing.
And I've got another one after that.
I get that. I get that thing of I want to do this one alone because and it might be it's usually a really, really good singer who doesn't want to hear the rest of us while he or she is doing their thing. But that's just not the style of our parties. Our parties are pretty wide open. So we will let people do that if they ask to. Please turn off all those other lesser singers' microphones. Not really our style, though. So if you get a chance to attend a Nasir karaoke party, and they are happening on a regular basis, remember that you should be singing. You should have the spotlight.
Yes.
Absolutely. That idea, you should have the spotlight, came up recently, and now it's on the tip of my tongue, and I can't remember what it was. So I'm going to let it go. May do a whole show on that. I've talked about it before, but it couldn't hurt to do a whole nother. Where does that even come from? A whole nother. How about a whole another? Well, that doesn't work. So I guess a whole nother is the right way to say it. Couldn't hurt to do a whole nother episode just on that idea of you belong in the spotlight. You need to be there. You need that visibility. Yes, absolutely. Scott says if you go to Port Canaveral, I'm in Orlando. Oh, cool. Yeah, we need to put... I'll tell you what, Scott and everybody else, it was in my plans pre-COVID when I went into semi-retirement from the IT industry. I was going to jump in my car with a couple amplifiers and guitars and things, drive around the country to anybody who was singing or playing garage rock, just totally amateur rock and roll. Stop over for a night, have a party, go somewhere else. That didn't happen. It's going to happen eventually. I just can't promise how soon. Because things are still nuts out there. But Scott reminds me that didn't happen, but it needs to. It really does.
Well, if we're ever in Orlando, we're going to the Harry Potter.
Amy's priority is get to Universal Studios Harry Potter.
It's my priority.
And I'm good with that. And believe it or not, as late as we're running, I still have more notes, which, again, I'm going to save for another time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Again, few bits of wisdom and some really narcissistic, self-gratifying, self-serving talk about our anniversary next weekend, which, again, we will stream the ceremony for. Who knows if we'll stream anything from the hall party.
We'll see.
So thank you for joining us. As always, we wish you success. We wish you every success. We want you to make you the best you can be. We also wish you flourishing, whatever that means. No, in the Aristotelian sense of actualizing all of the values in your life. Figure out what you want, figure out what it'll take to get it, and make that happen. And as always, I'm just looking at the chat here to make sure I didn't miss anything. I did miss a few things, but I'll be rereading later. As always, this week, as much as ever, and with next Saturday coming up being the celebration of romance between these two. Yes, I'm pointing my finger at ourselves. As always, but just a little extra this week, I wish you, Amy wishes you love.
Mwah.